Hello folks, welcome to the Edupedia world and I am Abhinay Gupta. Today again we'll continue with the topic, the meetings of the board and its powers. So in the previous lecture we had discussed the questions of section 174, right? And we had left the questions of section 175 pending. So we'll be covering that in the lecture today, but before that we would be covering some other provisions, right? So we'll be covering the provisions of section 176 before going ahead to the questions of section 175, right? So section 176, defect in appointment. Actually section 176 deals with the validity of the acts of the directors, right? So basically this section is formulated to provide a protection to the company as well as to the third party, right, where certain cases are done by the directors in good faith. So this is to grant validity to such acts, right, but not all the acts. So let us see what are the acts of directors that will be validated and what are the acts that would be considered to be invalid. So let us try and understand this topic with the help of a diagram. So consider this to be the lifespan of a director in a company, right? So this is the place where he is appointed. This is the initial day into the company where he is born into the company, that is with his appointment, right? And then the director undertakes some acts in the company. He performs his duties and the directors are liable for those duties, and those actions would be considered valid if their appointment is valid, right? And then suddenly in their life there comes a day when they notice a defect, right? And that could be any defect in a disqualification, or that could cause a termination of a director, right? That means there was a defect in his appointment, or the director had actually faced a disqualification that we failed to notice, but now we notice it and the director is liable for termination, right? So this is the day when these things occur, right? And then again the director continues to be in the office, and then he performs some more actions, right? And then finally there comes the day when he needs to vacate the office, right? So what we see as per this diagram also, that the act that the director has done in his lifespan between the date of his appointment till the date when the defect was actually noted, right? So the actions that were done between those days and that were done by the directors in good faith would continue to be valid, right? But after the defect is noticed, even if the director continues to be in the office for some time and he performs some duties or he undertakes some acts, so those will be considered to be invalid, right? So that is the basic that you need to understand in this section, right? And we will also cover this section in a little more detail, right? We'll take up specific situations and the specific persons, but on the whole, lump sum, if you look at it as a route map, this is what it is. So again, if we look at the diagram, then we see that before the defect is noticed, right? The defect, that means if his appointment is invalid by the reason of any defect or disqualification, or his appointment was terminated by virtue of any provision contained in the act or even the article, right? If something of that sort has happened, then the acts that were performed before this notice, it would continue to be valid, right? But there are again situations when even those acts would be considered to be invalid, right? When are they? That would be the situation where his appointment is illegal, or where there is no appointment at all, but still he was there into the board, right? And we already know that if such disqualification or termination comes to the notice of the company, then the acts that are done after that, like the subsequent acts, they would be considered to be invalid, right? And the situations where the act of the director are ultra vires the Companies Act 2013, that means that already are in contravention of the provisions of 2013, those acts would continue to be invalid, right? So these are the three situations. One is if the defect is noted, then the subsequent acts are invalid, right? If the act are ultra vires the Companies Act 2013, it would consider it to be invalid. And where the appointment is illegal, or if there is no appointment at all, then the acts performed by the directors would be considered to be invalid. But this provision of validity of the act of the director does not apply to the chairman. That means if a resolution is passed by casting vote of the chairman, right, then that would be considered to be invalid if the disqualification has attracted to the chairman, right? And if we move out of the company and get into the shoes of the third party, so if I as a third party, I come to know about a company, I come to know about a director who has faced certain disqualifications, and I know he will be removed from the office, and then I enter into a transaction with him, knowingly that yeah, he is disqualified, he is not worth it, or he does not have the authority to enter into the transaction with me, still I enter into a transaction with him, and then I face a loss or something. Will I be protected? The answer is no. Because if I already know that he is not the valid person, he is not the right person, I should not have entered into a contract with him, right? If I have entered, the companies are liable for that, right? So that is from the point of view of the third party also, right? So when we are talking about the validity and the invalidity of the act, then we should also remember that where the appointment of the managing director, whole-time director, manager, or anybody else, right, is not approved by the company in the general meeting. So far as it is approved in the general meeting, the act that is done in the intervening period would be continued to be valid. No invalidity would be attracted to them. We also had a question in CA Final May 1998, right? Over there they asked the same situation, but referring specifically to the managing director, right? And then they asked whether the acts done by the managing director after the expiry of his term would be valid. The answer is no. Those acts would be invalid, right? Okay, so that is all about section 176. I hope that is very clear with you. The basic thing that you need to remember is this route map, right? So in the middle we have the date of defect being noticed. Before that all the acts are valid, and after that all the acts are invalid, right? So if you keep this frame in mind, the time span, the timeline of a director in mind, you will be able to answer your questions very easily, right? Now the next topic that we'll take up is a very simple topic, but still you actually need to pay an attention to that. That is something that you don't notice, but we need to notice them. So I would just try to bring it to your notice. It is not something very important to learn, right? So we'll discuss the place, time and date of the board meeting. Just remember, we are talking about the board meeting. We're not talking about the general meeting, right? So in the act there is section 96, right, that focuses on the place, time and date of the general meeting. So most of them are actually defined, right? Section 96 provides a great detail of the place, time and date of the general meeting, right? But basically the place, time and date of the board meeting are left to the discretion of the directors. So that is the main crux that you need to understand, right? And now let us see in detail what it is actually. So if we talk about the place, right? So if we refer to section 96, then the general meetings are generally supposed to be held at the registered office. Or if it is not held in the registered office, it could be held in anywhere in the same city, town or village in where the registered office is situated or located, right? That is the place where the general meeting should be held, where all the shareholders of all over the country would come and attend the general meeting. But that is not a mandate for the board meeting. So the board meeting can be held anywhere, and that place can even be outside the country, because there is no provision provided for the same in the act. It is left at the discretion of the directors. Wherever you deem fit, wherever you find comfortable, you can hold the board meeting. So now I hope you're clear with the place of the board meeting. Next is about the date, right? The date of the original meeting as well as the adjourned board meeting, right? So the original meeting can be held at any day, right? Even on a national holiday. But the adjourned meeting cannot be held on a national holiday. Otherwise, it can be held at any day. And if we refer to section 96 for the general meetings, then the general meeting cannot be held on any national holiday, right? It is supposed to be held on any day other than the national holidays as per section 96. But for board meeting, you have no such provision. So the board meeting can be held even on a national holiday. But the case of adjourned general meeting is not the same, right? Where we have seen that as per section 174, if the board meeting cannot be held due to want of quorum, right? That was the provision of that section. If it is not held due to want of quorum, then unless the article otherwise provides, the meeting shall automatically stand adjourned to the same day, same time, same place in the next week, right? So that was the provision provided for the adjourned general meeting in section 174. But the provision doesn't end over there. The provision continues, right? It says that the meeting would be held on that day if that day is not a national holiday. Actually, the provision says that if that day is a national holiday, then the meeting would be held on the succeeding day, which is not a national holiday, which means that the adjourned general meeting cannot be held on a national holiday, right? But still, there are two situations where we can hold an adjourned meeting on a national holiday. Now, what are they? Right? So, if you look at the provisions of section 174 a little more closely, then you find that it says that if the meeting is adjourned due to lack of quorum, due to want of quorum, which means that if the meeting is adjourned voluntarily, which is otherwise than the want of quorum, then you could hold that adjourned board meeting on a national holiday too, right? And the other situation is, again, if you look at the provisions of section 174 a little more closely, then it says that unless the article otherwise provides, the meeting would be adjourned to the same place, date and time next week. That means that the article can otherwise provide. So if the article provides any specific date for holding a the adjourned board meeting, then that day the meeting would be held on that specific day, no matter if that day is a national holiday, right? So these are the two situations where the adjourned general meeting can be held on a national holiday. Otherwise, an adjourned general meeting will never be held on a national holiday, right? But the original meeting can be held even on a national holiday. So that is what you need to keep in mind when we talk about the date of the board meeting, right? Next topic that we deal with is the time of the board meeting. So as per section 96, the general meeting is supposed to be held on a business hour, but there is no such provision for the board meeting. So the board meeting could be held even after the business hours, right? So I hope the provisions of the place, date and time of the board meeting is very clear with you. Unlike section 196, these provisions are actually left at the discretion of the board, right? So that is all that we wanted to discuss with this section, with this topic actually, right? So now we move on to the questions of section 175 that were pending in the last lecture. So my dear friends, although the list seemed to be a little long, but this would not take a lot of time because basically most of the questions were direct. That means you had to write the provision of the section 175. You had to write everything about the resolution by circulation, right, that we had discussed. So you would discuss as to how the resolution by circulation will be conducted. So a resolution along with the necessary papers, right, that would be circulated in draft to all the directors at the registered address, right? And then those directors would approve it, and if it is approved by the majority of directors, the resolution would be passed. And between these two procedures, right, if not less than 1/3 of the total number of directors demand that the resolution should be passed only in the board meeting, then the chairman would call for a board meeting, and then the resolution would be taken up in the board meeting, right? And the resolution will be noted in the minute of the subsequent board meeting. So that is what we had discussed while we were discussing the provisions of section 175, and basically most of the questions actually asked for the same thing. So I would specify those questions, the questions in 2002, 2009, 2007 and 2000. So all the latest 4 questions asked you exactly the same thing, but just they had different uh, questions, like they had different words in the question, but they asked actually the same thing, right? And actually there is nothing more to ask in this section, right? But yeah, there is one more topic that we failed to cover in while we were discussing the provisions of section 174, right? There can be another case, right, where the meeting could not be held due to want of quorum, right? But then the chairman decided to hold the meeting 2 days hence. That means instead of the adjourned meeting to be held on the next week, same day, same place, same time, the chairman wants that the adjourned general meeting would be held just 2 days hence. So is that possible? Can the chairman do so? Right? So neither section 174 nor any other provision of the act empowers the chairman to do so. So the chairman cannot decide the date of the adjourned general meeting or board meeting. It will either be decided by the article or it would be the next week, same day, same place, same time. Right? So that is very clear with you. And now since we don't have a lot of questions in section 175, we would discuss a question on the topic that we have just covered, that is place, time and date of the board meeting. Right? So there was a question asked in CA final May 2000 attempt. Right? So that was a tricky question, because if you do not pay attention and if you're not actually aware about what are given in the provisions of the act and what is about section 96, which deals with the general meeting, and the board meeting is entirely a different situation, unless and until you are sure, you might get confused in your examination, right? Because if I narrate you as to what was the question asked in 2000, that was a little tricky, right? So over there you were asked that whether the board meeting can be held in Chennai, right, where all the directors of the company reside in Kolkata. So is that possible? Registered offices in Kolkata and directors reside in Kolkata. Can the meeting be held in Chennai? The answer is yes. It is the discretion of the board, right? Second is whether the board meeting can be called on a national holiday, and that too after the business hour, as the majority of directors of the company have gone to Chennai for vacation. The answer is again yes. The original meeting can be called on a national holiday. The adjourned general meeting cannot be held on a national holiday, but still there are 2 situations where even the adjourned general meeting can be held on a national holiday. We have seen that, right? And business hour is not a big deal. The board meeting is not restricted to business hour. That is section 96, which restricts the general meeting to be conducted in business hour, not the board meeting, right? The third question is it necessary that the notice of the board meeting should specify the nature of the business to be transacted? The answer is no, because we don't have any format and content of the notice, right? Even an informal notice is a notice, right? So these questions, although they were not difficult, but they were tricky. If you're not very clear with the provisions of the act, then you might get confused in the examination. So that was the only reason why I wanted to discuss this question with you, right? So I think that will be all for the lecture today, right? Stay tuned for the upcoming lectures. This is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you. Bye-bye.